And here we go. Ronnie, what's happening, man?
Not too much. It's been a while. It's been
Happy
a
New
minute.
Year.
I know.
Happy mid-COVID.
We survived the year, right? Like
I,
I know that's what everybody says, but I legitimately felt that way. Like I'm usually not like big into New Year's,
Mhm.
but this year in particular, I was like I wanted to see that clock like move over to the next year that night because it's just been so crazy.
There was
Like
something cathartic about moving past like 2020.
yeah.
I agree. Like it in the sense, and granted, let's just preface this because I'm sure we don't mean to say anything insensitive, but like this year's been crazy,
Yeah.
uh, but there's also been a lot of like interesting things that have happened for or like sorry, how do I want to put this? There's been a lot of like silver linings this year, right? And I think one of them is just like people realizing the value of their time back without commutes and social obligations. So like there's just been I feel like it was a very reflective year and a lot of bad things happened. So it was nice to move forward from it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
but
agree. Here's to a productive 2021.
I hope
Hopefully
so.
lots
Yeah,
of great things happen. Yeah, it's never good to be doom and gloom kind of thing. So
no, no.
I'm sure there's going to be challenges in 2021, make no mistake, but hopefully it'll be more on the upwards trajectory.
Yeah. Well, what I'm excited for in 2021 is the fact that like, there was the knee-jerk reaction and shock and horror of like, is this the Black Plague all over again? Right
Hmm.
when things happen. So people were, understandably very worried and very scared. Now I feel like there's a level of creativity that's coming out. And I'm not just talking about VR, I'm talking about life, right? Like people are finding creative solutions to like keep life moving forward,
Yep.
no matter what industry or whatever the case that is. Like, so I'm excited for that energy to continue.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the vaccines are coming, and even if you don't care about the vaccines, it's like there was something that I read, and it was just like or not read, but now I'm just spouting off random internet.
No, go for it though. I'm interested to.
But the interesting thing was they were talking about like I don't know if he was a historian or epidemiologist. I don't. Okay, sorry, I'm just sounding stupid now. But the basic premise was, looking back scientifically at all of the past pandemics that have happened, throughout history, whether Spanish flu, Black Plague, whatever, all that stuff. Like generally, no matter what people did or no matter what societies did to mitigate it, they would it would run its course through the global population, in roughly 18 months. So it doesn't matter if vaccines are new, right? But it doesn't matter social dispediting, mask, like all that stuff, like it would run its way through the
Sure.
population. So I'm
Yeah,
not
the
saying,
course. Yeah, that's
yeah,
about the length of time. Like,
exactly. Coronavirus, right? So it's got to do its thing. So, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't wear masks or you shouldn't distance or whatever the case. Like, do all of that.
yeah,
But in my mind, like, I just have July of this year as like, hopefully things will start to get to normal, and maybe that's like the herd immunity that everybody's
sure.
talking about, where at some point the virus goes or evolves and mutates enough times where it becomes as like it's still very catchable, or what's contagious,
Mhm.
but it's the symptoms are much less or much a little bit muted now. So okay, I don't know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
so
yeah. No, no, no.
we should just stick to VR. But I just thought that was something interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah. No,
and
I
so
think everybody's hopeful that, things will get back to normal. So whatever way that ends up coming, hopefully it's
yeah.
sooner rather than later. So
And the reason I say it is because there's a level of optimism that comes from it, right? Like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and also for anyone who's like still kind of floating along, like I just feel like just mentally prepare yourself for like another 5-6 months of this, and
yeah,
and in that time it's just like, okay, you're going to be home, or you're going to be isolated, or I shouldn't say isolated, but like you're going to have this time to yourself for the next 5-6 months. Like, what are you going to do to take advantage of it?
yeah. Because when this stuff is gone, like kind of like you said, the silver lining, like
Mhm.
it'll be amazing to just be back out in the world again. But at the same time, you know,
Everything will be back up and running.
yeah, like it's kind of like all of a sudden you're gonna miss that time at home, I think. So
Dude, 2020, like back half of 2021 and 2022, I feel like there's gonna be like 8 weddings a week that I'll have to
oh
I'll,
god.
I'll just have to decline. Everyone will
Oh
just be catching up.
yeah.
But no, it's been a very interesting period of life, and it's interesting to go through it, at the life stages that you and I are at.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that I feel like, and maybe this is more self critique for us, but like, VR probably should have taken off a little bit more
Yeah.
during this time.
I mean, to be fair, I think it's like I guess it just wasn't like this was the perfect time for it to take off.
Yeah.
I mean, you can use all kinds of excuses you want, like, companies weren't able to meet demands of, in terms of hardware, and there were all kinds of constraints in terms of, what you could make,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like from the bottom of my heart kind of thing, like being in this industry long enough and knowing the stage that it's at, I honestly just think VR isn't quite ready for that spotlight yet.
That's fair.
And this would have been such a great time if it was ready for that. But I think this kind of made me realize, okay, like there's still some of what we're going to talk about today, I think, in my opinion, are kind of some signs that we still have a ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my kind of gut impression of it, is that just like this stuff is, I still think, like, if anything, I think this has taught us that technology is really needed in order to, like, humans at the end of the day are very social creatures. We need to be with each other, around each other. We need to be able to communicate as effectively as possible, even when, actual physical contact isn't something that we can do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of inevitable that we'll need technologies to be able to replace that kind of contact when it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
So like, on one hand, I think that, this pandemic has showed us that there's a great need for great VR, but I just don't think we're quite there yet for, like, everyone in the population, me, you, our parents, like everybody just stepping in yet, because it needs to be it. And I think it will be eventually something that's so seamless. It's not going to be something imposing, like, having to set up sensors and all that kind of stuff. We're already seeing like, some of that go away, but
Agreed.
like it needs to be as easy as like hitting on my webcam and I'm there,
Yeah. Okay. So two thoughts that came to mind while you were saying that. The first is, one, I don't think that, or I think that we should be cognizant of the fact, like the macroeconomic factors that played into this, and people were very uncertain about the economy. I mean, there's a lot of people who lost their jobs, and like that. Like, so with that, spending anywhere from $200 to $1,000 on a headset was probably out of the discretionary income, right?
Yep.
That, or like probably very low on the priority list.
And I want to add to that too, like on that point, it's spending that money on something that you don't really have experience with, right? Like
exactly.
a lot of the people we're talking about new users. So like, it's one thing for like someone like me or you to say, hey, I have all this extra time, let me buy like a nicer VR headset than the one I already had. I think it's another thing to say, like, when given the uncertainty of the financial situation of a lot of people now, for them to say, hey, I think now is the time to jump into this new technology that I personally have no idea if I'm going to enjoy or not.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and so that goes in line with like the second point that you brought up, where like people, like, VR isn't ready for that spotlight. I agree with that, and tangentially, I also think that VR just isn't ready. And it made me realize, just in the context of our conversation right now, that VR is still so incredibly niche, and it made me, like, it was just a reminder of how niche VR is, right?
Yep.
Because, and the example that I'll give here is the fact that, like, Zoom went from being something that was used in, like, forward-thinking corporations to now everybody knows what Zoom is. Zoom is a household name, right? The company, the brand, everything. And that's because of the fact that, like, your grandparents, your people in developing countries, wherever the case was, they all have a smartphone.
Yep.
So the technology was there for them to be at that level.
Yeah.
But to take advantage of something like VR, we weren't there. People didn't have the hardware, right?
Yeah.
And
it needs to be accessible. Like, people, like, basically it needs to find its way into people's homes without them realizing exactly. Like,
Well, everyone just needs to have it, right?
yeah,
Which which brings us probably to the main topic that we wanted to talk about today, which is what Apple is working on. Sorry, let me stay close to the microphone. Which is what Apple is working on, and Apple announced their VR headset. Now I'll let you give some of the details, and we can pull up one of the articles that I have
yeah.
here. But
Let's go over it because I definitely have read the articles, but
mhm.
it'd be nice to be able to focus on the details here and then discuss them because there were kind of there's a lot to discuss in terms of, I mean, the general takeaway is that they're definitely working on something that supposedly they, and again, this is kind of leaked information, so we don't know how.
Yeah,
From the sound of it, to me, it sounds like it's accurate. Whether this is actually, and whether it ends up releasing in this state or not is another matter. Just because
yeah.
Apple works on a lot of products, and a lot of times, even late in the game, they make decisions whether or not to release those products.
Yeah.
But I think what we're reading now is legitimately what is the plan for this hardware, I think.
Yeah, well, let's just go over the top points that come to mind for me, and what I feel like are the major things that we can take away. And granted, again, these are all still rumors, nothing's confirmed, but there's a high degree of confidence, let's say,
Sure.
with these rumors. And at the end of the day, I think we all know that Apple had a VR division, and they had something in the pipeline.
Yep.
So to get the information we're hearing now, I can't imagine that this is too far off base. And if anything, it's more so just a timing perspective. But the big things for me were, one, okay, so they're planning a release probably or projected in 2022
Yep.
for a VR headset that will be high end. I think when we say high end, we're probably comparing it to the Valve Index price point of $1,000, and you look at all of Apple's hardware, and it's going to be hard to imagine them coming out with a Walmart friendly version for lack of better terms.
In terms of pricing, yeah, I was a little bit like I got mixed messaging on, like, I saw some estimates suggesting, yeah, anywhere from like a few $100 to $1,000, but then I kind of get the feeling that it's going to be even more than that, just because, like, some of what I read is that they really expect this to be like a low volume product, something almost like a flagship, maybe like the MacBook Pro. Like, I don't know, something that they're not trying to sell in mass, but they're trying to get out there so that people can start, seeing what this is like, almost to prepare the market for what eventually will be a more mass product.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but the thing is, like, I don't, Apple has never been the let's get everybody on board, with our price point. It's let's make a killer product that people can't say no to, and they'll find a way to buy it, right?
I'll tell you, like, that's what, like, if it's like, that's bottom line is, like, there's still so many questions we don't know about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm super, like, let's go back. Like, are there any more bullet points you want to get across before we?
So those are the main ones, and then I was just going to share. I mean, I was going to share this because I
do think it's going to be a built-in. Like, from what it sounds like, they're, like you said, they're suggesting it's going to be a high-end device, and supposedly the chipset inside may be even more powerful than like the.
What's currently in the MacBook Pro, right?
The M, is it called the M1?
M1, yeah.
Chip. It's the.
So yeah, I can just share this. I mean,
basically, they're going to be using Apple Silicon to really make this thing super powerful, and it's supposed to be more of like an all-in-one headset, kind of more like a Quest, is what it sounds like, with AR capabilities, which is kind of the key thing there. Because I think a lot of people were assuming that Apple was trying to get more into the AR realm.
Yep.
But so that's kind of where some of this VR isn't ready stuff kind of, to me, hits the fan, because I think
the AR stuff was probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. I think
the precursor to an eventual AR glasses is what was my biggest takeaway.
Yep. No, and that's what I think. I think ultimately, I think what's going to be mass marketable is going to be AR if it's implemented correctly. But I think what tells me that the technology still needs a lot of work is the fact that Apple doesn't want to jump straight into AR, that they're going to need this VR. Like, I mean, I've always been of the opinion that the problems that have to be solved in order for good AR to work outside of the VR realm are very vast. And so I've always been kind of a fan of kind of a more VR like headset doing AR.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like what Apple is doing, which to me makes sense. I mean, if Apple's the kind of company that likes to put out like the best foot forward, I guess, in terms of like, it seems unlikely to me that you could come out anytime soon with like an AR product that would just blow people away.
Yeah.
But if you had a really good VR product that also had good AR, so that's what I mean. Bottom line with this, I mean, I'm super excited because I do like most Apple products. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do to differentiate what they're doing with AR and VR as opposed to what's already out there. Like if this is just like a shiny, like if I haven't tried it, so I don't want to like poo-poo on it at all or anything, but like if this is just like an extra premium headphone, like a AirPod Max or something. Like I've heard some things about the AirPod Max that make me like the spatial audio stuff sounds super fascinating to me. But there's nothing about that headphone, at least right now, for me personally, that makes me say, "Oh, I need to spend $500 or $600 on a pair of headphones that I don't already have." Right?
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that Apple has some stuff in this headset that they're bringing to market that isn't just like kind of nicer than what we have, but it's like legitimately like, oh, they put this together in a way that no one else has before, or just has some of that Apple magic in a way that like makes even someone like you or me say, I have to have this headset.
Yeah.
Like,
so I wanted to share this because I think in the context of our conversation, like Apple is, we'll just say, relatively late to the game, right? You know, I think Facebook and Oculus have done a phenomenal job of getting out there. You can see that they have the biggest market share, followed by Sony, and you know, it's a slew of others that are on the back half. Now, the big point that comes to mind for me is like what made Apple so successful as a company, I guess. I mean, now granted, they have a whole line of products and now services, but what was big with Apple and where they dominate and where they're getting into trouble now, where there's smaller companies fighting back, is the App Store, and how they dominated. They created the platform known as the App Store, and then Google came in and obviously was able to develop something on the Android platform. But they had this App Store. They take a 30% cut of any and everything, right? So now my question is, obviously, Apple's a huge company. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of developers that want to work with them. Now, here's the thing. They're going to be getting into a situation now where Facebook is already way ahead. Facebook is paying millions of dollars out to developers to create exclusive content.
And they've been buying up these. Like, if you really think about it, not only do they have partnerships with a lot of these, but the ones that are really big, they've just been flat out buying them.
They've been buying the intellectual capital in the space, right? So so to me, there is a very serious start. Now, I'm an Apple head. I love their products, and I'm a big fan of the company. And I have a fear that if this product doesn't come out and absolutely destroy in terms of its performance, there's a lot of people that are going to pass on it, right? Yeah. There's a lot of people who say like, oh, like, you know, I already have a Quest, or the Quest is $200, or for like whatever the price of the Quest is or will be, right? So like it's
more. I think they have to do something different. Like that's what the bottom line is. They have to make, and really that's where I think the AR capabilities come into play. Like, how are they going to make this like a social device? I know Facebook is technically supposed to be the more, you know, social company in terms of connecting people and all of that. Like their network and data collection, all that stuff is kind of their bread and butter. Yeah. Whereas Apple is like privacy and I guess like intuitiveness of UI. I don't know.
Yeah, like ease of use, right?
Ease of use. They just need. I mean, maybe the ease of use is going to be the big takeaway here. If they can have some really killer social like applications, and then ease of use and integration into their ecosystem that really like makes it super simple for people that have
Yeah.
iPhones or headphones from Apple or like all these things to work in a way that nothing else does, then maybe they'll have something. But like the first thing that came to mind, like if they just try to do kind of the same old thing as Facebook, like can you imagine buying like a headset for VR gaming and like
Yeah.
not having Beat Saber on it, for example, or like
Yeah,
like
I
I mean
agree.
these are all like literally kind of like what you said, like every major tentpole that like you absolutely need to have in VR right now. Like so many of them have either been funded for or bought by Facebook,
Hmm.
and like you can bet, like I mean right now you see those on the PC, you can use them on an HTC headset or a Valve Index or whatever, but I kind of doubt that you'll be running that on an Apple Silicon standalone
Yeah.
headset, right? So it's just interesting, like
Yeah, well, so to me, the thing that they have to do is they might be going or okay, let's play let's role play here in the sense of like if we were in that marketing room or that strategy room, where would they need to be going? What is the demographic that they're trying to hit? And I think this goes back to the whole like Zoom thing that I brought up earlier. It's like Apple is just getting into the gaming space, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily known for gaming space. But what to me in the way that the iPhone dominated is they need to create a headset that your grandma can put on and with one or two clicks get into big screen or some social
yeah,
platform with her nieces or with her
yeah.
grandchildren, right? Like that's what they need to create and have like readily available.
See, and now this is why I also think that, so I totally agree with you. And I think part of this conversation leads me then to double down on what I said at the beginning of the episode when I said VR isn't ready for prime time
Oh
yet.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
I think Apple knows that that's the end goal, and it almost seems like they realize that that's like they love waiting, right? They love coming in when the market is kind of mature enough to where they can release a product that takes advantage of the innovations that have already occurred. And I guess that's what they're trying to do now, but
And
they
the
don't want to wait.
ecosystem.
Yeah, but they don't want to wait too long. And it might be one of those things where they're acknowledge, like by releasing a VR product, they're acknowledging that this is a segment they have to get into, and
Hmm.
they've waited as long as they can. I still think that because they're focused on VR and not AR only, that they're acknowledging with that AR isn't ready by itself.
Yeah.
And I also think by at least, if the story is to be believed, making it an expensive high-end device that, like, I still got the sense that that they're not thinking of this product yet as being one that everyone's gonna like whereas the iPhone, everyone has an iPhone or a similar type, like
Hmm.
smartphone at this point.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
one.
think they're. I think that this device is going to be the first to kind of bring them eventually to making this more of a pervasive type of device. And so it almost reminds me of like the initial Oculus dev kits or the original. Like maybe this is Apple saying, we know we have to get into the space. We need to start creating an ecosystem. We need to start getting
Mhm.
developer support, but we acknowledge that maybe this isn't going to be for everyone just yet. That's
Yeah.
kind of, so no expectations. We're going to release the best VR/AR product that we can right now. We're going to get into the space. We're going to get people creating experiences for our product. We're going to get people excited about it. And the one that everyone's going to jump into is going to be a little bit further down the road. Like this is something I'm starting to wonder if this is how it's going to eventually pan out. But I don't know. I don't know. That was just like some of the vibe I
Yeah.
got from that article is like, it's almost like even Apple's version of VR and AR isn't ready for prime time yet. But like they
Yeah.
need to release something. And so this is them acknowledge, like this to me is both A, we're not quite there yet, but B, like, oh, this is important because
Yeah.
they're they're making this step for an important reason.
My only fear is that they are making a step just to try and keep up with the market rather than trying to
Yeah.
lead the market, right?
Yeah.
So what have our previous conversations regarding Apple and the VR AR space been about before? The one thing that blew my mind away that I can't stop thinking about, because to me it's revolutionary, is the fact that they believe that their AR glasses in the future will replace the smartphone.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm not saying that anything that falls short of that is a failure, but you were talking about how they have to do something different.
Yeah.
So to me, if they come out with a headset that's just going to have the limited developer support, let's say they even get cross-platform play and they get all of the stuff that's available on Oculus and Steam, and like you can do that on your Apple headset. What's the draw to invest into that rather than Facebook, or rather than or Oculus, or into HTC or whatever the case is out there? My curiosity, and the reason I brought up, and then you kind of echoed with the ecosystem, is how is this going to play into the Apple ecosystem, right? So in one sense, like, a very easy thing is, okay, while I'm in VR, now if somebody's calling me, there'll be a little thing that pops up, and I know who's calling me without having to take my headset off. Okay, that's one easy thing. That'd be great, but I'm sure you can probably get that on the headsets that you have now if you're creative enough. Other than that, I'm trying to figure out like how there would be a very in-depth interconnectivity between the devices you have, because it's hard for me to believe that we will go from a handset like an iPhone to AR glasses overnight, right? Like
Yeah.
it would be amazing, but and maybe I'm just not creatively or creative enough, or technologically creative enough to see it in the way that they're seeing it. But we're not going to go from the iPhone 21 to the eyeglasses 1, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's
Yeah,
going to be trading in. Like, and if we do, that'd be a phenomenal technological feat, in my opinion. I hope that they can pull it off. But I wonder if the VR headset will be the first thing that kind of starts to link these two devices.
Yep.
And take some of the heavy lifting or some of the fun activities that you do off of your device.
Yep.
Off of your iPhone device.
I can't think of, I mean, Apple does this really well. I can't think of an exact example, and I don't remember where I saw some of this analysis. It must have been from some YouTube video or something, but I was really fascinated by it. Apple is very good over time. Like anytime, like exactly what you're saying. Like when it comes to like iPhone updates, for example, or they seed, like they never make huge changes, like, or very rarely do they make huge changes like just at an instant. A lot of times they kind of have a plan on, all right, this is where we'd like to be and this is where we are now. And part of the reason why Apple devices seem so intuitive is they're very clever about kind of making a roadmap on getting their users from A to Z. Mm-hmm. So like if they know that they foresee like their UI behaving, if they, for example, I'm sure they knew way in advance of when they got rid of buttons on iPhones that at some point they wanted to be able to just have all of the user interface done through gestures and swipe, right? Mm-hmm. And so they start planning for that in advance so that by the time they get rid of your button, you've been dealing with UIs like subtly in between that have relied more and more on gestures, to when they finally get rid of that button, it's not like a shocking, like, oh my gosh, how do I use this kind of moment for the user? Yeah. Like even getting rid of the button, like it seemed like a big deal, but then like within, a few days, it was completely seamless for me. I didn't even think twice, right? Yeah. A lot of that was very clever in advance preparation of their users to get used to dealing with certain things that they didn't really recognize. And I think some of the like supposedly they've been doing some of that stuff with the latest version of Mac OS, and like starting to move away from certain types of like fonts and certain types of iconography. I've heard some people suggest that some of the different types of icons that they're showing seem like they would be more friendly in VR and AR type environments. And literally, they're starting to feed some of that in on devices that we're using now without recognizing that that's why they're making those changes. And then all of a sudden, when they introduce a new product and it utilizes those things and it works and you don't think about it, like had they not made those changes before, they would have had to make a drastic change from like those devices to this new thing. So all I'm saying is like, I think you're 100% right. I think that they're pretty smart in terms of knowing the kinds of changes that they can bring about.
Yep.
And so I don't know how like I'm curious to see what their implementation of this will be. But my thoughts are if they do it right, it'll be something like what you're suggesting. This will be kind of the bridge that for a lot of things, they're going to both bring their users on this journey with them, but also figure out from people what works and what doesn't work so that by the time they release their next product, they'll really like nail it home, you know?
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see where they price this thing and what demographic they kind of target, because I think that'll tell you how confident they are that they're close versus far away. Like if they price this thing at like $5,000, they're probably
They're
not.
not going to.
No,
But
but you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
that tells me that like, oh, they're not super confident that like this is ready yet. But
Yeah.
if it's something that is more priced along the lines of like a laptop or an iPhone, okay, then you're starting to talk like, you know, this could gain some traction, you know, amongst people that'll matter. So
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, so the thing is with what you were saying, like I agree 100% on the changes being very incremental. But my only follow up to that would be the fact that those incremental changes happen on a like update by update or like year by year update schedule rather than
like between
you know
products,
a new product launch, right? So and again, like let's just look back like 15 years. They launched the the iPhone, revolutionized smartphones. I mean, we had touch screens, but their touch screen UI was out of this world, and there was one button on the phone, and everyone was just like, "How can you have a phone with one button?" Right? So design was great, performance was great. Follow that up with the iPad, which is very very closely related, but still able to utilize a completely different market and different skill set and use case or use scenario. The other big one I would say is the Apple Watch, right, or the iWatch, or whatever. Yeah, I think it's called the Apple Watch officially.
yeah,
And how they jumped into the wearables market, and you had Fitbit, and I don't remember the other ones that were there before, like Nike Fuel Band and all of the Jawbone. So like you had Apple jump into the space and deliver a premium product that eventually people got, and they're like, yeah, it fits so seamlessly with my phone. I would never get another, tracker, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, like I just hope that when this comes out, it can deliver that kind of change. And this is really just echoing the sentiments, your same sentiments. But
so I agree with you, and yeah, and that's a good. I like the distinction you made between like product updates versus like the products themselves, because yeah, I agree with you. Like to some extent, like yeah, they want to ease you into their new product, but at the same time, a new product is new, so there's going to be a learning curve to that.
Yeah.
The thing that kind of struck me when you were going through the history of their products, I mean, if you think about it, all of those items are really successful because they take something that the person was already doing, but made it so much better and easier for that person to do. Like, or maybe, or in some instances, they were like something like with the watch, like they weren't able to track all of those things before, but they wanted to stay in shape or they had an active lifestyle, and this made that active lifestyle so much richer and easier to use and all of that sort of thing. So that kind of makes me think that if this VR AR thing for Apple is going to take off, they need to figure out, all right, well, what is that use case? Like with the phone, you have all those things that you need a phone for. An Apple, like I think the whole thing with the iPhone, if I'm remembering, like Steve Jobs' first unveiling of that thing was like, we're not only making the best phone, we're making the best internet surfing device. And this is an iPod phone and it lets you browse the web. It's this new device that lets you do all these things that you do now, but like in a better way,
Yeah.
right? And then the iPad was kind of similar in that, like, hey, it's basically like a digital book, basically, but you can also write and you can browse the internet and you can do all these things, right? So it's something that people already do. Watch, same thing. It takes this, it it makes you kind of like a superhuman in terms of these are things that humans already do, and this device now makes me able to do those things a lot better. And so my
Yeah.
question is, I think Apple needs to figure out what can a VR and AR device do for people better than any other device out there does now.
Yeah.
That's the thing they need to figure out and implement super well and in a way that is super accessible so that people use this thing all the time. Like, I think a big hurdle for Facebook, and it sounds like they're always in, like, they always want to know, like, what can we do to keep people in VR longer, or what are the things that people are really spending their time on VR? Like it's one thing to just have the headset, sit around all the time. It's another thing to like figure out what are those active use cases. I feel like during this quarantine, I see all kinds of, like, obviously there's people that are hardcore gamers. They play, like, extensive hours of video games. A thing that I've seen a lot of people doing now that they've been having to be at home is use VR headsets for exercise, because
Mhm.
that's a use case that, like, it, like, especially for people that don't have gym equipment, all of a sudden they have a device that kind of allows them to have workouts that, like, if you don't have the headset, sitting there in your room by yourself, like moving your arms around like this, doesn't really work for a
Yeah.
good exercise, right? But like
Yeah.
you throw the headset on and all of a sudden you can like be in an aerobics class and it makes sense, right?
Yeah. Following an
Um,
instructor in
yeah,
real time and
so like that's a good use case. Like I
yeah.
think there's a lot of, like, potential for
Yeah.
social interactions, all that stuff, assuming that you can get enough people into VR, like especially people, and it's not some kind of burdensome thing where, so these are questions, especially the AR point of view. Like, I think one of the things that kind of holds the VR back sometimes from those implementations is the fact that, like, especially if you're around other people in your environment, like if you're in a house with your family or
Yeah.
whatever, like you can't just throw a headset on and be with them but also be with someone online. So like being able to somehow find a way to be present in your environment but also interact with people virtually at the same time, I think, is something that needs to be figured out.
Mhm.
So these are all things, like, I'm sure, like, all these companies are kind of looking at, but I think that would be the thing that I'd really hope is something that's being like a driving force with like a product, not like it. Yeah, that's what would get me excited to try, like, spend a lot of money on a new VR headset or AR headset from Apple, is like seeing
Yeah.
this new take. If it's just like another gaming headset from Apple that, like, is made out of something different and kind
Just
of
better
looks cool, like,
better
yeah, like maybe I would be interested in that if they could sell me on it. But like the
not
thing
the general public though.
yeah, but like the thing I'm excited for is I want to see, like, the things that they care about with their other products, and
Yeah.
especially the revolutionary ones. Like if they can figure out what that is about AR and VR and like
Yeah.
capitalize on that,
I agree. And the one thing that popped into my mind while you were bringing that up, and maybe we can kind of close on this point just in the interest of time. Going back to the theme, I feel like, of our conversation today is like VR not necessarily being ready to be thrust into that spotlight, right? And I think we've touched on different areas where that wasn't really the case. One thing that I feel has really accelerated in the current environment, or current and post-COVID environment, will be digital connection, right? The amount of people, like, if you had gone to your relatives before and said, like, hey, you should get what's that called? You should get a $200-$300 headset so that you can be in one state, your family can be in another state, and you guys can like jump into VR and watch a movie together. They would have been like, no, whatever.
yeah,
But now they understand the value of Zoom and FaceTime, and that you can really still develop and maintain relationships. Is it the best? No, obviously I think that being in the room with someone, nothing beats that. but the fact that the world has kind of launched itself, or society has launched itself forward a little bit more technologically due to necessity in many cases. And I'm just talking about on the personal sense. There's a whole business line, right, where like business travel, from just financially speaking, like that is going to take a tumble for a while, because people realize that they can just invest in Zoom and everything's still running for the company.
100%.
So instead of Zoom, if they're trying to be one of the more tech savvy companies that can offer this, and all of a sudden you have a headset and you're in a conference room with the people that you're meeting with. So like there's stuff like that where I feel like you are absolutely right in the initial opening comments of VR wasn't ready for it. And I think to follow up on that, we are in a space now where I feel like it is being primed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the general public is being primed on digital and virtual communication and connection.
Mm-hmm. And this is the next evolution of that, I think.
Oh yeah, exactly. So and I haven't had the conversations with all the friends and aunts and uncles and about the what's that called, big screen and the headset and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that if I were to bring those things up now, they would be like, that sounds interesting. That would have come in handy during the pandemic.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So I just feel like it's pushing people forward.
People's brains are opening up to the idea of
very
like
much so.
just in general, virtual communication is becoming more normal in more ways than it was before.
Absolutely,
instead of just being on the phone, more and more people are now getting used to interacting with the help of video conferencing, computers, all that kind of stuff. And I totally agree with you. This is like a primer. All that stuff was there before, and by a lot of people barely being used. Mm-hmm. And now it's being used constantly. Yeah. And so now with people using that stuff more and more, it's inevitable that that stuff is going to have to improve somehow. That's like that's what humans do, right? Is they improve the stuff that they use, I guess. So
just in time for 5G.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
all that bandwidth. Wait, there's
interesting timing there. I think when we were at our last conference, like in person, when they were setting all that stuff up, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, there's going to be a need for this stuff. Like,
we'll make sure of it. Wink, wink. Yeah.
But anyways,
cool, man. Well, dude, it was fun catching up. I forgot to mention at the beginning. This is episode 200, so congrats on episode 200.
That's crazy.
We made it here.
Yeah. No, we were kind of talking about like part of, obviously life has gone in the way with updating and being able to record something, but part of it was just like the stress of like figuring out what we wanted to do for this episode. Like on one hand, it's not like the craziest big type of episode. On the other hand, I feel like it's kind of fitting that a big piece of Apple VR news would come out on our 28th, for us to record a 200th episode, because like both you and I are really interested and like excited about that. So
we've been following Apple since, our VR journey started, right? And again, like Apple's released nothing yet. They've given us so much to talk about.
It's kind of,
just in the rumors. So it's been good. Hey, this podcast is coming up on 5 years old now. Can you believe that?
That's crazy, actually. Just in general, like when I
change in the space,
when I started to break down in my head, like 200, like just start counting the 200 and think like that's how many episodes we've actually, like, it's pretty crazy. So I'm proud of us for getting there,
It is. And I think we're still just getting started, as is the VR industry. So there'll be plenty more to cover. And guys, to Ronnie's point, I think we were just at a place where COVID and schedules were catching up to us, and I think we all collectively looked at the last 2 months of the year and we're like, yeah, let's just enjoy the holidays with family and friends and not worry about this. So I'm glad that Apple News got us back on track, and I'm excited. I honestly, that got me back into just browsing through the subreddits and looking up random news and getting excited about VR, right? And I think it's because we have this light at the end of the tunnel now where, okay, we're starting to move towards a normalcy. So this collective running in place that we've all been doing for the past year will start to evolve into whatever life looks like afterwards. And I'm still a big believer that VR will be a significant part of the world at some point. or I mean now and even more so in the future.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So
Cool, man. All right. Well, guys, we'll be back with episode 201. There will be, I don't know. I'm not even going to make any promises right now. Right now, I need to dive back into games. So maybe we'll do some game talk. Maybe we'll figure some stuff out. But we will be back in your feeds, inboxes, I don't know, tweets, wherever you guys are looking for us. Very, very apologies again for taking an extended sabbatical. We'll just call it the COVID sabbatical. But we are back, excited to talk about more VR. And if you guys have any news that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter, shoot us an email. We'd love to dig into stuff further and talk about it here on the show. All right, Ronnie, man, have a good one.
all right, you too. Take care.